company called me expendable during layoffs. A week later, their biggest competitor hired me as CEO. The hardest part wasn't losing my job. It was the way they said it. Like I was replaceable inventory. Like years of contribution could be reduced to a single HR checkbox labeled asterisk, expendable. But what they didn't know was this. I wasn't just working for them. I had been studying them. And the company they underestimated me at was about to become the reason I rebuilt everything at a level they could no longer compete with. My name is Avery Collins ***. I am 37 years old ***, and I live in Chicago, Illinois, USA ***. And this is the story of how being discarded by one company became the reason I ended up leading the company that replaced them at the top of the industry. I worked at a mid-tier enterprise software firm called Halden Systems. Stable on the surface, fragile underneath. I joined as a senior operations strategist, the kind of role where you're supposed to optimize systems, reduce inefficiencies, and scale growth models. And I did exactly that. For 5 years, I fixed broken workflows, rebuilt failing internal pipelines, recovered lost enterprise contracts, improved system efficiency across multiple departments. But none of that mattered when the leadership decided they needed cost restructuring. That's the polite corporate phrase. Layoffs. It always sounds clean on paper, until you're the one standing inside it. The meeting was scheduled for 10:00 a.m. No warning. No context. Mandatory attendance. The CEO spoke first. Calm voice. Carefully rehearsed tone. We are entering a strategic realignment phase. Everyone already knew what that meant. No one said it aloud. Then HR took over. Names started being called. One by one. When mine was called, I already knew. Not because I was expecting it, but because I had been observing the patterns for months. Departments being reduced unevenly. Projects quietly reassigned. Senior roles flattened. The system was preparing before the announcement ever came. When I stood up, no one made eye contact. Not because they disliked me, but because people avoid mirrors during uncomfortable truths. HR handed me the packet. Termination notice. Severance details. Exit instructions. And then the sentence that defined everything. Your role has been classified as non-critical and therefore expendable under current restructuring guidelines. Expendable. Not redundant. Not restructured. Expendable. That word stayed with me longer than anything else. Because it didn't describe my value. It described their perception of control. I left the building without speaking. No scene. No argument. No breakdown. Because I already understood something most people only realize later. When a company calls you expendable, they are not evaluating your worth. They are revealing their thinking. That night, I didn't look for another job immediately. Instead, I did something different. I reviewed everything I had worked on. Every system. Every process. Every inefficiency I had quietly documented over the years. Not out of revenge. Out of clarity. Because I realized something important. If a company can't see your value internally, someone else eventually will. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. That kind of silence that exists right before movement begins. Then, on the 7th day, I received an email. Unknown sender. Simple subject line. Opportunity discussion, confidential. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something about it felt intentional. So I opened it. It came from the executive search division of a company called Northbridge Core Solutions. Their biggest competitor. The company that had been slowly overtaking Halden Systems in enterprise contracts. The email was short. Direct. We would like to discuss a leadership opportunity with you at the executive level. No role title. No department. Just intent. I stared at it for a long time. Because this wasn't normal. Companies don't reach out like this unless something already exists behind the scenes. The next day, I took the meeting. It wasn't in an office. It was in a private executive conference space downtown. Glass walls. Minimal branding. No distractions. 3 executives were present. But only one spoke directly. "We've been tracking your work at Halden Systems for over 2 years," he said. That changed the tone instantly. Not guessing. Not guessing at my capabilities. Observing. Measuring. Tracking. He continued. "You were responsible for several operational improvements that Halden never fully acknowledged." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because it was true. Then came the sentence that shifted everything. "We are offering you the position of Chief Executive Officer." No interview process. No probation period. No negotiation framework. Just the offer. And a company ready to move based on it. I finally spoke. "Why me?" The executive leaned back slightly. "Because you understand systems," he said. "And more importantly, you understand when they are being wasted." That sentence hit differently. Because it wasn't praise. It was recognition. I left that meeting without giving an answer. Not immediately. Because decisions like that require alignment, not impulse. But I already knew what I was going to do. Because one company called me expendable, and another saw me as foundational. And the difference between those two perspectives is everything. I didn't accept the CEO offer immediately. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to understand something first. What kind of company hires someone like this without hesitation? And more importantly, what do they already know that I do? Northbridge Core Solutions didn't behave like a desperate competitor. They behaved like a company preparing for a precise move. Strategic. Calculated. Patient. 3 days after the meeting, they sent me full internal briefing access. Market position reports. Growth gaps. Competitor analysis. Including Halden Systems. That's when I saw it clearly. This wasn't random recruitment. This was targeted leadership replacement. And I wasn't chosen because I was available. I was chosen because I had already built inside the system they wanted to outperform. On day 4, I accepted. No announcement. No press release. Just internal activation. Quiet transition. Immediate authority transfer. And just like that, I became CEO of Halden's biggest competitor. The first thing I did wasn't dramatic. I didn't restructure the company. I didn't fire anyone. I didn't issue statements. I studied everything. Internal pipelines. Client acquisition patterns. Retention weaknesses. System scalability limits. Because leadership without understanding is just performance. And I had no interest in performing. Meanwhile, Halden Systems had no idea what was happening. They still believed I was expendable. Still believed Layoffs had cleaned inefficiency. Still believed they had stabilized. They were wrong. The first shift came quietly. Northbridge started revisiting old enterprise contracts. Not aggressively. Just strategically. Clients that had been long-term stable under Halden started receiving better proposals. Better pricing models. Better system guarantees. Better support frameworks. And something interesting happened. They started responding. Because clients don't stay loyal to companies. They stay loyal to reliability. And reliability had just changed hands. 2 weeks into my role, I received a report. Halden Systems had lost 2 mid-tier enterprise clients. Then a third. No public announcement. No internal panic yet. Just quiet erosion. That's how companies actually fall. Not suddenly. Gradually. Then all at once. Then came the moment I had expected but didn't need. A confidential message from a former colleague at Halden. Short. Uneasy. They're saying Northbridge is targeting our clients directly. I didn't respond. Because I wasn't targeting anything. I was simply improving what they had already neglected. But perception, inside collapsing systems, is always distorted. They look outward for causes instead of inward for reasons. Halden called an emergency leadership meeting. I was not there. Of course. I was no longer part of their system. But I could imagine it. Confusion. Defensiveness. Denial. Then blame. Because leadership teams rarely accept structural failure. They prefer external villains. A week later, Halden's CEO issued an internal memo. Northbridge is engaging in aggressive talent and client acquisition practices. It sounded serious, but it was defensive language, not strategic awareness. And I knew exactly what that meant. They still hadn't understood what changed. It wasn't aggression. It was competence migration. The following month, Northbridge grew faster than projected. Client retention increased. System efficiency improved. Market trust shifted subtly but consistently. And Halden. They started hiring consultants to diagnose unexpected attrition. They were looking for technical explanations. But the problem wasn't technical. It was leadership perception. One afternoon, I received a message from Halden's former COO. The same man who had signed my layoff approval. We need to talk. I didn't reply immediately. Because I already knew what he wanted. He didn't want reconciliation. He wanted stabilization. We met in a neutral conference space. Not corporate. Not formal. Just quiet. He looked different. Less confident. More cautious. We underestimated the impact of your departure, he admitted. I nodded slightly. Not surprised. Then he said something more direct. We didn't think you were essential. That word again. Essential. Expendable. Replaceable. I looked at him calmly. You didn't think at all, I said. Silence followed. Not defensive silence. Recognizing silence. He finally asked, what would it take to stabilize things? I answered honestly. Not emotionally. Not dramatically. You don't stabilize something you already deconstructed. And that was the truth. Companies don't collapse because one person leaves. They collapse because they mislabel the people who are holding them together. A few months later, Northbridge officially surpassed Halden in enterprise market share. Not through hostility. Through consistency. Halden tried restructuring. Then rebranding. Then leadership reshuffling. But none of it addressed the core issue. They had called stability expendable. And now they were experiencing what happens when it actually disappears. One evening, I stood in my office overlooking the city. My assistant entered quietly. Halden has requested a formal partnership discussion, she said. I paused, then shook my head. No, I said. Because rebuilding something that dismisses its own foundation is not leadership. It's repetition. Instead, I focused on expansion. Not revenge. Not correction. Expansion. Because the strongest response to being called expendable is becoming structurally irreplaceable elsewhere. Months later, Halden Systems was acquired in a partial buyout by a restructuring firm. Their original leadership team was replaced. Their market position reduced. Their influence diluted. And me. I didn't celebrate. I didn't announce anything. I didn't need to. Because success that comes from clarity doesn't require noise. One afternoon, I received an email from an unknown junior employee at Halden. It simply said, "I heard you used to work here. Thank you for proving we mattered more than they thought." I stared at it for a moment, then closed my laptop. Because that was the real outcome. Not domination. Not revenge. Recognition of value after it had already moved on. And that is the part companies always learn too late. You don't lose people when they leave. You lose them when you decide they were never necessary.